Dan and Amy. So Trump had a lot to say in North Carolina yesterday on script. Of course, the comment that is getting all the news is the regret he expressed for some of his poorly chosen words, particularly those that have been personally painful to others. But he also said something about being a truth teller. And of course, this is the contrast he's trying to draw between himself and Hillary Clinton, who 2/3 of the American people don't trust. Trump, the truth teller.
I speak the truth on behalf of the factory worker who lost his or her job. And that's happening more and more in our country. I speak the truth on behalf of the veteran who has been denied the medical care they need and the medical care they deserve. And so many are not making it, but they're going to make it if Trump becomes president. That I can tell you.
Yeah, I'll tell you. So again, on script, this goes back to what I thought was one of his best moments during the convention, during his convention speech, was the dichotomy between I'm with her, well, I'm with you, right? Yep. For Hillary, it's about her and being a loyal subject to the Queen. And for me, whether you believe it or not is kind of a secondary question. It's an important question, but it's secondary. In terms of messaging and branding and contrast, I'm with you. And that's a very simple but critically important distinction, and seems like Trump is getting back to that, which I think will serve him well politically.
It's a great start.
But for more on this, we're happy to be joined by David Harsanyi. He's a senior editor at The Federalist, federalist.com. David, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So you wrote a really interesting piece earlier this week about Trump's rollout of his quote-unquote extreme vetting. And the fact that liberals are focusing on the not the practicality of having such a test for immigrants, but the underlying purpose of it, which is to identify immigrants who share and want to inculcate American values. That's the real problem the left has. Why is that?
Well, I mean, it's just that, and, you know, I've been very critical of Donald Trump in many ways, but, you know, when he said that he'd like to test immigrants, and obviously I think that the practicality of that is pretty tough, test them for their, you know, knowledge of American values, but also how they feel about it. There was such an uproar on the left over this idea. You know, it just struck me as sort of ridiculous. I mean, why would anyone be offended that we should want to understand if immigrants have bought into the American ideals? I mean, we can pretend that it's all relative and that there are real no American ideals that we disagree, but that's not true. I mean, we have a constitution, and certainly we have basic small L liberal values that we all share. If we don't, I think that's a big problem, and I think that this is part of why maybe Donald Trump resonates with certain people who feel like liberals have sort of left or moved away or forward away from the sort of constitutional values that we claim to all agree on and like.
Well, you mentioned that you weren't a big, huge Trump supporter and been critical of him. Did his speech last night move the needle in any direction for you?
I actually think he's gotten better lately, especially when he stays on script. I'm a little concerned for him that, you know, he's sort of changed up his staff in August, which is just problematic usually, but also who he sort of turned to. But, you know, I think yesterday he you know, I don't always agree with him, especially the sort of populist message on trade and stuff, but obviously that resonates, and I think if he just focuses on that without making comments he'll have to regret later off the cuff, he'll be a lot better off. I'm not sure the needle can move in a big way off of one speech, but I actually think he's been a little bit better lately.
Well, and just the last week, too. I mean, so we started the week with him talking about, making an explicit ask for black voters to consider his candidacy, talking about civil unrest, talking about terrible predatory big government policies that have destroyed urban centers and foreclosed opportunity for so many, disproportionately minority. Then he gives the speech last night where he exhibits some humility. And today, while Obama is golfing and Hillary's vacationing, he's going down to Louisiana to survey, flood-ravaged areas there. So, I mean, boy, if he could kind of bottle and repeat that week for the next 10, maybe he's well-positioned to still win this thing.
Yeah, I mean, going down to Louisiana is a really good move on his part. Excellent. Because he's trying to speak to the sorts of people that are suffering there. And I think that the idea that the president wouldn't be there and he would, I think is good for him. Even a tweet he sent the other day, I think he said they'll be calling me Mr. Brexit. I think it's smart. He essentially, conceded that he was down in the polls like Brexit was down in the polls, but that he can win and he will win. So it's sort of subtle in a way for him, and I think that certainly helps him. But, sometimes I wonder if he moves too far away from the sort of a little bit crasser message he has and a little more straightforward, that would hurt him as well. Because I think for all our criticisms of him, he did win because of his sort of honesty or seeming honesty. So I think that's important for him to sort of balance those two things out. Yeah,
but I mean, I would think at this point, though, those individuals that were so that found that so appealing, they're kind of baked in and they're coming out. He's the vehicle for their movement and their frustrations and exasperations and aspirations, and that's in. And so now, kind of the long overdue pivot that so many inside the Beltway have been talking about.
I mean, his best ally is Hillary, right? She's terrible, and she's not a good candidate. She's not liked. She's not trusted. She lied about she lies about a lot of things, I think, but especially the email controversy. So obviously there's a huge opportunity there to contrast yourself with her as a truth teller, as you mentioned before. So I think if I were him, and I'm no expert on winning an election, but I would certainly pound away at that distinction. That distinction is what makes, I think, is what, if he's going to win, is why he wins. That people don't trust Hillary and they want someone who they think will do what's best for America and be honest with people. Now, I don't know how many independents or liberals or people who are typically Democrats, maybe white working class Democrats, will buy that message, but clearly, in my estimation, that's the way to go.
David, who do you think on Trump's campaign came up with the idea to head to Louisiana today? And do you think he'll get in the water, wear waders, meet with the people who survived?
Unless he's auditioning
so.
To be a CNN anchor. I hope not.
Yeah, I mean, I want him to take off the suit coat. I want him to put on jeans or just get dirty and just get with the people who are suffering. Or is that never going to happen?
I don't know. I'm trying to imagine it.
I know. I'm trying to imagine it too, and it feels a little uncomfortable, but yet I want it to happen.
Yeah, I don't know if that's him. I don't know if I can ever remember him being that way. I mean, I grew up in New York and watched him for a long time, and I don't see the jeans thing happening. But you never know. But I think that all he needs to do is have some sort of, how can you say, some sort of personal, real moment with a family there or someone. And I know it's kind of contrived. Politics is awful, but I mean, I think that he needs to be more human in a way and connect with people, because those are the people that he's reaching out to, and those are the people that he's always talking to with his populist rhetoric. So to actually see it in action one time, I think would be helpful for him.
Maybe he'll just buy everyone's 40,000 homes were damaged. Maybe he'll just pick up the tab.
Yeah. Well,
then they'd accuse him of buying the election.
Right, exactly.
No, he meant
right.
it from the heart.
You can't.
Come on.
You can't win
Such
for losing.
Pessimists.
Well, and it's funny you talk about a real moment with Trump, because a lot of the stories you hear about him with people that have interacted with him are pretty positive stories. That he's different in person than he is when he's bloviating on the stump sometimes. And that that he's done a lot of nice things, and he's actually a relatively affable and congenial guy to be around. And it's interesting that you haven't seen any of those moments. I think the closest we came to it was when that gentleman gave Trump his Purple Heart, but then it got all messed up because of Trump's.
I always wanted one of those.
Well, his imprecise language in response to that. But then you heard from the Purple Heart recipient who gave his Purple Heart to Trump that their interaction behind the stage, but you haven't seen a moment like that for the public to consume. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm turned off to there are politicians I've hated in my life. I think hate's maybe a strong word, disliked, and then I got to meet them, and they were really actually pretty interesting people, or funny, or warm, things like that. I don't know if we can ever really get to know these people, so I always feel like I'm being manipulated in some way when they're being, when I'm hearing these stories about them. So, it gets to be it's a weird situation, and it's difficult to sort of convey what a person's really about. But yeah, I mean, I think it's very rare that you see through that, and I'm sure he's done nice things for people, and I'm not sure why they don't make a bigger deal out of it. But it's tough because you don't want to look like you're being a complete fake or something.
Right,
so,
right.
Though I don't know that Donald Trump thinks about it that deeply, and I don't mean that as an insult. I think he just is himself. And I think he'll be himself till the end because he, I believe, thinks he's smarter than the people around him, and no one's going to tell him how to work this campaign. He thinks he knows how to do it.
Well, that's the thing, and so now with this act of contrition last night, he has set the bar. So you've apologized for it. That means you're going to learn from your mistake and not do some of the things you've done since the convention. And so now he kind of has to hold himself to a new standard now as well.
Right. Now, again, I've been very critical of certain things he said, but I've been critical of things that he said that have to do with policy that I don't like, or something about the Constitution that he said that I don't like, or whatever. But this kind of overreaction that the media always has to every little thing he says because he hasn't because it's not completely coherent in the way that they want. It's gotten so annoying to me because they do not have the same level of interest in every single word Hillary utters, and I think it's just the media just blows everything out of proportion. So for him, I think he does need to be a little bit more careful, but I don't think he can be obsessed with that. I mean, yes, he said some stupid things and he regrets them. I think that was enough. I don't think he needs to sort of repeat that all the time. But yeah, obviously he needs to be more careful, but I don't think he needs to be too careful because sometimes I feel like in our little bubble in the media, especially here in Washington, we obsess about every little thing that most Americans I know in the real world don't really care about that much.
Right, and again, as you said, to maintain his authenticity, which is one of the attractive qualities, right? All right, he is David Harsanyi. He's a senior editor at The Federalist, thefederalist.com. David, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.